Okay.
I'm gonna stop my video. That's ridiculous.
Okay, so we're in the empathic listening portion. We're going to do mutual empathic listening. I guess we'll have about 45 minutes of that and then go into the triad exercise. How much time do you need for the triad, Celia?
Well, it's the four of us, so at least half an hour or maybe 40 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, let's leave that. So we have chapter 12 is what we're on, and chapter topic is called topic is or the chapter name is listening well in relationships, and he starts off with a quote, "But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of heaven dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Feel each other's cup, but not drink from one cup." Okay. And this chapter summary, as I was reading it, was he starts off saying relationships rely on communication, understanding, and that he has a heading actually, understanding and valuing differences. And under that, he says there are different psychological types and perspectives. He mentions the types, like Carl Jung has archetypes, Myers-Briggs has the type indicator, and there's the Enneagram. So these are different models out there for different types of people. And then a relationship of mutuality and collaboration. So we're wanting to foster a relationship of mutuality and collaboration was the other topic he mentioned. And then he had another heading, which is how is reflective listening? He asked, how is reflective listening different from conversation? And he says conversation takes turns, sharing perspectives. But reflective listening is a focus on the understanding. So we're really focusing on trying to understand each other. And then he kind of throws this in about using reflections instead of questions, trying to do more of that. So with that, just introduction, we're open for anyone starting and select who you'd like to speak to, and we have about 40 minutes for that.
Yeah, I would like to start if yeah.
Whoever. Yeah.
Okay. Who have I talked to? Well, William, you put thumbs up, so
okay,
I'll
sure.
take you. Yeah. I think thinking people in groups, like also many business, how do you say that, meetings or sessions or trainings do to understand how people respond, is actually distracting from the here and now, because you are so busy getting that person in, where do they fit, who are they, instead of what is here and now going on. And I think what is here and now going on with this person, or what do they want to express, is more something that you have to let go of any thoughts about that person.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Should I? Okay. So,
yeah.
So far what I'm hearing you say is that, generally you talked about business or sort of like a structured situation. A person comes in and essentially they're looked to be slotted into some prefabricated slot. Are you good at accounting? Whatever it is. Whereas in the experience of really reflective listening, it's just more of abandoning preconceived notions or how or what you're going to do with the information, and sitting there fairly clear, just kind of experiencing that person, being in the moment and seeing who they are with as little interference from yourself as possible.
Right, 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 right. And I think that is the biggest work for us, to step away from ourselves. On the other hand, we still have to stay aware of ourselves. So that looks like contradictory, but I think there's two sides possible to do that. So the focus, the shifting focus, totally focused on the other, and the focus on yourself is on a body level, is on that your body gives you signals about how you're doing. So you can let go of your thinking about yourself or thinking about the other person, but be in touch with your body work, and meanwhile catching the message of the other person.
Okay. So, so essentially, you see two concepts in reflective listening. One is maybe losing is not exactly the word, but essentially letting go of a lot of your preconceived notions to the greatest extent possible, but also being aware of yourself. And although they seem conceptually to be opposites, they're not. And so therefore, what you're suggesting is one way you can do that is to focus your thoughts on really hearing the person, but being aware of your body signals, which is going on, and that should guide you and be able to help you avoid a lot of the blocks that we've talked about.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. That is wonderful. Thank you. I feel totally heard.
My joy. My joy. Thank you. Okay. Peter. Okay.
All right, I'm here.
Okay, great. Well, I like this chapter because it started to apply reflective listening to the world as a whole. I know not just me, but Peter and the rest of you also, but in my job as a special education teacher, I had to respond in a bunch of surprising ways and surprising situations and things like that, and yet try to maintain sort of like a structure and a cohesive whole, for instance, safety and actual mutual hearing and things like that. But you achieve it in different ways in the course of a day. So if somebody were really going to act out and had a book about to hit another kid, then I'd be, I wouldn't be so passive. I'd be yelling, "Hey, don't hit him with the book." However, if I have a student who came in and seemed to be hungry, then I was all about reflective listening and making sure that I, gave him something to eat and tried to be nurturing. So those are all the different things, and I just go back to the fact or my experience that reflective listening enhances all of it, and the reason I think is because the truth is not within me or within you, and is not in between, like there's some sort of thing like that, but our experience together gives us a much more greater picture of social reaction and reality.
So can I slow you down so I could reflect it back?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. I tend to run on. Sorry. Go ahead.
So you're really appreciating this chapter because it had a real world sense, that it was really applying it to issues of actual practice of actually doing this type of work. And you were reflecting back on your history as a special ed teacher and how there was just some times where some limits or some things had to be put in place. At the same time, you really value that ability to just deeply listen to what people need. Use the example of if the kid comes in hungry, you could be really reflective and say, "Wow, you're hungry," or something like that, and really reflect on that to be effective in that communication with the child, as an example. And it sounds like you're really just appreciating how the practice is being applied to a whole a whole methodology of real world actual things happening.
Right. Yeah. I feel that our maturity and growth depends upon incorporating the psychological other healthily into our view. I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you really believe that being empathetic to the other is part of our own personal growth.
That's right. And I also was very touched. There's a form of therapy that by this guy, Ascioli, Assolgi, I believe, or OGI. But he called it psychosynthesis as opposed to psychoanalysis. And what they did is they drew like a circle. And then the person, with those problems would put all their problems in that circle. And then you would focus on that. And then the therapist would say, well, who's observing that? Who's observing outside that circle? And that helped the person take them outside of their, own perspective and start to open up a bit.
So you really enjoy the idea of that outside part of yourself looking in, particularly you're describing in this technique where they put all their stuff on the wall and then they'd say, so who is looking at that? And you really, right. You enjoy that part of communication that allows you to take that step back and see the situation for what it really is.
Right. And I find that both in that and reflective listening, I find that you're more than you think you are, and it happens more.
Cool. So you really think that people, once they can take that step back, they realize their full potential, kind of like they realize who they really are in that way.
That's right. And you don't have to be a slave to your thoughts of like I'm this or I'm that or something like that. There's always a creative option.
Yeah. You really think that it's you just love it when people are able to pull themselves out of those thoughts of that moment to step into who they really are.
Yes. Thank you, Peter. I feel heard. Wasn't easy.
Thank you. Edwin, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So in thinking about, I always go back to my career in these conversations, but even today, I had this interaction with a random person, someone who happens to live in a building that a client lives in. And this person, basically, I walk in the building, this person busts out their door yelling, "Are you the social worker?" I'm like, oh God, that's like one of the best quotes, like when I hear that, I know it's time to play, and, and when I realized this woman just wanted to be heard, I used that focusing skill that I kind of was thinking about. And I actually told myself, all right, all this nervousness and scaredness, like what's going to happen right now, I just got to hear what this woman's saying. And in the end, she was just satisfied getting the phone number to my supervisor because she just wanted someone to listen to about some random thing that my client did that like was totally random. The client does this every day. But this woman just wanted to be heard. And it was amazing to me, actually. She like became my buddy in like 2 seconds. Like literally like after I said, okay, this is the phone number to my supervisor. I cannot confirm or deny any information to you, ma'am, but you can speak to my supervisor. I had to maintain confidentiality. But the second she saw that I was listening, she went, I just care about this person so much and I want to make sure she's okay. And it was quite lovely. It's like in a second, it went from being this person that jumped out their room saying, "Are you this?" to like, I really care for this person and I want to help them and I don't know how to help them. And how do I help you help them, pretty much? And it was just, it kind of reminded me of like when I focus, when I become reflective, instead of putting my own stuff into it, everything just works better.
Mm-hmm. So you had a really powerful experience where you just was confirming that when you sort of step aside and really focus on someone, that things work better. And the example was you're going to see a client in their apartment and someone just jumped out and you're kind of feeling kind of nervous and anxious about it because she was like very energetic. And then, but you just started focusing, started listening, and then the listening just transformed the situation where she kind of became warm and was a sense of connection, and it was just sort of a transformative moment, and just reinforced that it was the listening that's so important, the focusing on being present and listening that was the important.
And there's a sense almost, it really makes me think of, because we've spoken in the past kind of what those boundaries of empathy are, and just realizing that, this isn't like the best building I'm going into, my clients don't live in the best places. And my first, initial thought hearing this woman so intensely was like, oh God, I'm in this terrible building with this person that just jumped out their room to start saying, are you the social worker? Kind of thing. And even in that situation, focusing was effective, like really just listening. And of course I have to balance that with where I am, what I'm doing, the actual environment. But really that focusing took away all those other factors. Because literally in a minute, she basically, the tone changed and the whole conversation became a totally different one.
Oh, so initially, just the way she jumped out, and with the context of where you're at in a core area, that there was maybe some fear and anxiety about, oh, who is this person? But instead of kind of, the way you responded was just to listen to the person, and the listening just transformed it, and it transformed that fear into connection and understanding and a positive actual warmth on your part towards this person. And the person really seeing that the person wanted to actually contribute to your client's well-being.
And it just, actually, I'm realizing how it almost seems cute to me now that when she pops out her door next time, and for the rest of my time working there, it's not going to be a negative thing. It's going to be, hey, it's this lady. How that's powerful. That's power. I don't even know her name, but I made an ally in the building. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
So you know what? I could show up there, and even while we're talking, then another person kind of randomly ran by and said, "Oh yeah, this happened." So I've got multiple people like rallying just because I had one, empathetic response.
So you're just noticing that having had an empathic response transformed the fear and the anxiety that you were feeling, created kind of this positive energy, and that positive energy has ripple effects. That every time now you go to the building, you're going to have that connection with her, and so you won't be going in with maybe as much fear and anxiety, as well as other people are seeing it. And that's sort of rippling out to this positive connecting energy. And it all started by sort of empathically focusing and being present with this person.
Yeah. Just for transparency, I still got to watch myself, but it's much better than it was. Really thinking, it's much better than it was, just that little 1% of work made things much better.
Yeah, there's still a fear and anxiety level, but maybe it went down a bit more. So you're still not saying you're not like Pollyannish, just blindly going in there. You still have some, caution, got to watch out, have to be careful. But it's shifted a little bit in a positive, less fearful direction.
Sure. I feel heard. Thank you very much.
Okay. Cool. Celia, if I could. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you're muted. Yeah. Now you're. Okay, so what's coming up for me is sort of a little bit about, we're now in chapter 12, and he's now starting to talk about relationships, right? So we've gone through 11 chapters where that hasn't been the focus. And I'm just noticing how when we do our empathy circle, it starts right off with the relationship aspect of it. We kind of jump right into it. So we've already been doing this relationship building, with the whole group for 11 meetings.
Right. So even though it's only now in Miller's book addressed to the relationship, we as a group already have done it from the get-go.
Yeah.
And worked it already. Yeah.
So I would say our approach is superior.
We are pretty ahead.
So I started out with the relationship.
And also, like, that is really, yeah, like that is really a blessing, because that is something you're after, right? So,
Yeah.
so that is what it should be about.
Yeah, and I feel a little self-conscious. Am I putting, is that comparison? I don't know. Is that judgmental? So I was kind of looking at myself.
Well, yeah. So you can think, do I judge him only addressing it now, or do I feel better than him, or whatever? Yeah. And that's a little self-conscious for you.
Yeah, a little self-conscious. But I do think the effect is, we start building right away. We start practicing. We start, learning these skills relationally right off the bat. So I think that I think it is more effective in terms of the relationship part. So,
that you feel what we do is actually more effective, starting straight away with the relationship, focusing on that one. Yeah.
And it's like just doing a prototype. I like prototype learning, which I sort of learned from human-centered design. So, he provides the prototype, and we just learn by doing. So I think it's,
right.
I feel good that we just go jump into this, and we learn by doing, instead of like, planning and thinking it to death. We just kind of go and do it.
Right. And that's another benefit, to just jump in straight away and do at least a part of the relationship and with a skill that we can straight away do.
Yeah.
And not needing to think about things or reading about stuff.
Oh, yeah. And I had brought this up in another group, and someone else was actually liking more the individualistic process where you start on your own. So I can see where there could be a component where you start sort of individually, because it might seem safer to some people, and then you jump into the relational empathy circle group. So there might be different people who that, more like he starts, on your own, reading, before you jump in. So that might be something to think about too.
Okay, so besides that, you see for yourself that you would prefer starting out in the relationship straight away. You also saw that some people had the desire to really work on themselves first and start from them. So from their perspective personally. So that may be two things that we could offer in the training.
Yeah, at least like a couple lessons to begin with, which is if you want to start on your own, and because people, they'll see it modeled, and so it's like little baby steps for them moving. For some people that want it, I would prefer people start with the empathy circle, but for others, we might want a little introductory, baby steps because they might feel afraid of jumping in with a group of strangers. And
right. So you are also aware that for some people it is more attractive to start with themselves, because it's also scary to be in a group and maybe be open or share things, or they would love to discover it first for themselves, what they could do. And that we could offer that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And the other part is starting to work on this fears circle, fears empathy circle. I'm tying it in with what others have said. So when Bill said, put your problems into the circles, I thought, put your fears into the circle. Sure. So so I was going to bring that into the other group, that, bring your fears into the circle. And that would be one way to sort of address them. And
so that actually working with a focus on a topic like you work now with fear, that could also be like addressed, just put it straight away in the circle and work with it. That you can also enter from a topic.
Yeah, it's another exercise to to bring into that. And then hearing Peter's story, I realized his story was about fear, his fear and anxiety about going into this environment. And then, so I started looking for the fear in what people are saying and sort of, kind of reflecting that fear. There's just, it's just kind of an insight and then just seeing the power of empathic listening, how it transformed that fear, the relationship between, anxiety, fear, the danger aspect of the place he went into, and how all the ramifications of empathic listening. So anyway, it was thinking about fear. I'm kind of like starting to look more for the feeling of fears and what people are saying.
Right, fear has really really attention of you, since especially you work with the group and are focused on what the fear does and how can it be worked with empathic listening. And even the example that Peter gave brought you back to that and thinking, wow, yeah, he moved through it and transformed it from fear to, and by using empathic listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's so much more possible there.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel heard. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay. Peter, can you listen to me?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. I'm sorry my image comes later, but that's what it is. Yeah, the relationships. It was funny this morning. I talked to my husband. We talk about things all the time, and his work is very much metaphysical work. And relationships, how we get into relationships is often by electromagnetic attraction. So we are electromagnetic fields for each other that attract each other. Mm. So if I am in a situation that I feel fear or I feel not totally comfortable, I really have to look into myself, like, obviously there's something I either want to expand on or I need to be really careful for. So either or.
So can I reflect back?
Yes, please.
So in exploring with your husband this morning, you were having the conversation about how relationships are formed from this force, from this sense, this actual, thing that exists within people. And you're just thinking of how that lives in your body and lives in how you interact with people. Yeah.
And how it attracts each other, because it's an electromagnetic field. So it means that it has a message for me. And a chance. And I thought when you said how it was transformative for you, that reminded me of how much of a big chance empathic listening or reflective listening or just going in the conversation with a positive statement that you are there to help can lift yourself up as well. And I think Bill said something like that, but at that time I was thrown out the Zoom. So I did not totally hear what he said.
But it sounds like you're really considering the power or the ability to really like uplift the situation just by that small little bit of energy exchange or that small little bit of positive intent, that it kind of really can change everything all in that one shot.
Right. And if you can become aware of it, it is in your benefit. Even if you are fearful, even if you're scared, it is a chance.
Yeah. So that taking, having people be almost brave and taking that chance, you're seeing the power of that.
Yes. Thank you. I feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. It's me again. Bill, can you hear me?
Yep. I can hear you. Ready to listen?
Actually, hearing Celia, I'm kind of thinking maybe I'm just like reaching that point where, now that I'm 33, I'm like a full adult or something, but I reflect back on particularly a lot of the stuff that happened in my teenage years, all the way through college. And I realized how much that little chance would have like changed everything. Like, and I know people have to live through things, to get the life experience, but like, just like little things. Like I realized, wow, if someone had just given me this one little drop of advice, someone had just listened to me in that way, in that 1 second, I could imagine like a whole different life almost. And realizing that importance is really, it's something that's kind of moved me recently. I really thought about it, that like, wow, this XYZ happened in the past. And if someone had just said, wow, you're really feeling XYZ, like really just feeling this truth in my body that, wow, I could have really just moved past that much more quickly. Like something would have shifted. Like my life would look different than it does today. And to be honest, I don't know if positive or negative, but just realizing the ramifications of that chance almost. I've been thinking about that lately.
Okay. So you were thinking about how experience shapes our lives, and that we all go through various trials and tribulations. And then you're kind of going back and you're kind of thinking how if someone had listened to you at that particular point, then it could have made a big, big change in your life. You're just seeing how at the intersection of those events, charged events, I assume, and experiences, how the experience of having someone listen to you and say, wow, this is really happening for you, and sharing that experience might have, helped you or changed things in a very significant way.
Mm. Yeah, that's true. And also, just acknowledging for myself, I did have a lot of empathy at that point in my life. I did have a lot of people that were listening to me. Mm-hmm. And realizing that even with that, there are still things that like, it strikes me every day now. Like I wake up in the morning, I realize, wow, if someone listened to me for this other thing, even I had even more empathy, or I had different type of empathy, that it would have looked different. And okay. I'm just, even, the situation I had at work, that one little, that it's like that one little teaspoon of sugar really did make the medicine go down, and I wonder, it kind of makes me think of the transformative power of really listening to people.
Right. So what I'm getting is in kind of recapitulating what you were talking about and revisiting it. So it wasn't that there was a lack of empathy in your childhood, but that it wasn't particularly, as I understand it, reflective listening. It wasn't this particular practice of listening, which I infer that you feel is very powerful and therefore could have changed things. So it wasn't that people weren't willing to listen to you or anything like that, but they hadn't done it in this way. And you're feeling that doing things in this particular format can be very powerful and change people's lives.
Well, no, I'm not really committed to the format. Yeah, it's not, I don't even care about the format. I mean, I had really, really good empathy in the past. It's just realizing how it could impact someone's life by reflecting on my own.
Okay. So it's how is in reflecting on the past by reflecting on your own. So in other words, just seeing how empathic listening in various forms can affect positive change.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel complete. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Okay, Edwin?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I'm feeling that, reflecting upon what Celia and Peter said, and actually there was something that I still was unclear and about what Peter said. In other words, and he was talking about having empathy, but then also there's some sort of quality that I felt he was looking for. Now, that might have been a misinterpretation on my part. That's what he said. I'm not trying to say what Peter said, but there is that quality to good listening. There's a sort of ineffable aspect of it where you don't quite know what happens. There's not quite one format. I did A, B, C, but you know that if you did A, B, C, it's format and you don't feel really listened to. There's a certain, I guess, reflective listening may be analog, not digital. So I'm just sort of playing with that. And of course, it's kind of hard to talk about it since it's so fungible and changeable. I'm just really seeing, though, themes of power, themes of feeling listened to, and then also, being like just how you can do things. So why don't you summarize that? I'm getting a little bit better at self-editing here.
So there's one part was you weren't quite clear what Peter was meaning or what he was saying. It was a little bit unclear, but you were kind of getting into the nature of listening and the power of listening, and just noticing how the listening relates to power. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's kind of what I got.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's a struggle. What you're describing, which I feel heard about, is it's sort of a struggle in trying to put these on, define these things in the moment, and try to deal with them.
Okay, so but you're kind of looking at you're kind of at the edge trying to figure out these things and express them, and because of that, it's maybe you're seeing that it's a little bit difficult in reflecting them because you're just kind of you're exploring these topics. Sounds like you've thought about it before, but maybe haven't verbalized it.
Sure, and then talking about the moment, and what Peter talked about. I always remembered there was a boy, big guy, who wanted to. He was trying to beat up one of my students. And so I had a good relationship with my student, so I was able to kind of back him off. But this guy just wanted to fight. And so then he turned on me. Well, I'm going to fight you. And so what we do as special educators, we're trying to create, they're focusing in on you. And so you create a wider version of the world. So I said, well, if you were going to do that, I'd have to call the police. And, so I take myself out of it. I'm trying to tell you what to do so you can, be safe. And anyway, he wasn't having any. And so then finally he said, I'm going to fight you. And then I said, okay. And he says, well, you call the police. And I said, well, you haven't done anything, so I'm not going to call the police. And I turned away. And he was trying to, it was so amazing, because in order to fight me, he had to communicate. He had to face to face with me. And that's one of the techniques we do. We don't try to confront people face to face in de-escalation. But so I was walking away, and he was constantly trying to run around and stand in front of me and confront me. But by the time he did that, I was past him. And so because we simply didn't, if I had turned, fight was on. And because I didn't turn, no fight. So it's amazing, what you use, like your body in this case, in the moment for effective communication.
Mm-hmm. So communication, yeah. So you're kind of just having interest or looking at that it's in the moment. It's about being in the moment. Feeling yourself in the moment for effective communication. You're telling a story of how one of your students, kind of wanted to fight you, and they had a very focused energy. And that feeling of focused energy, if you can sort of deflect it, get people to kind of get some space around it, that you can, those are some ways of de-escalating that potential for fight. And you tried to tell them about the police, make them think about something outside there. So you have all these different ways of taking that focus and shifting it. So instead of just focusing back on him, and that which would kind of lead to the fight. You're kind of going off in different directions. He's still trying to create that contentious focus point. So you're just kind of like amused and wondering or thinking about and noticing kind of the dynamics of how this works. This escalation or de-escalation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you. And the only one thing that, the other point is just how, in that case, it wasn't what I was saying, but it was body language.
Oh, so it's beyond the physicality. It's you're like moving and not, you're moving in a physical way that's sort of de-escalating through physicality.
Right, and if I had turned to face him, it would have been an immediate fight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's kind of that communicating without words, and so that awareness of it, and sounds like, you really enjoy kind of insight about how that works. And
I do. Thank you. I feel heard.
Okay. Then I'll speak to Peter.
All right, I'm here.
Okay. I had written down some notes before about what to say, and I'd said it, so I'm not sure what to say now.
You're not sure what to say now. You're kind of just floating there.
Yeah, it's thinking about the chapter. Yeah, the chapter is about mutuality, about relationships, about the how we need to work together, and then the other part was about different people having different perspectives, and then like Carl Jung and the Enneagram, and there's sort of these models of different personality types, and I've seen that around. So I was thinking a little bit about that. The book Applied Empathy from the designer in New York. He has a group of models like that, archetypes. So I don't know what to really make of all that, those archetypes. I've seen it. It can be kind of helpful to realize that there's just different personality types, and that there's nothing good or bad about them. They're just different personality types.
So you're just kind of taking the information in, and you're still kind of formulating what actually works. And you're looking at all these different versions of how people communicate different personality types, essentially. And you just like, that's kind of random almost, it's just kind of, you have to work with what you get in those situations.
Yeah. And that the personality types, that there's nothing, inherently good or bad. It's not non-judgmental. It's just the realization that people have different perspectives, different makeups, different constellations, and there can be some patterns among people. So that kind of makes sense. And so it could be kind of, it can support people in just being more accepting.
Yeah. So you're just, appreciating people for where they're at and the patterns that tend to happen. And if it's an advantage to you, you'll take it, If it helps you be more empathetic, you'll take it.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking about what Celia was saying about being in the moment. So you don't need to even know it's like you don't need to know the specifics of the personality types. You just kind of listen to them empathically, and it's kind of like it's the same process for all the personality types.
So there's some meaning to it. Maybe it'll help you kind of expect what's going to happen next, but at the same time, you want to focus on that listening and just being present.
Yeah. And the fears. I'm getting excited about the fears.
You're getting excited. You're testing out this new model.
Yeah. Because we need something that will engage people. Like, why are they going to do this? And I think sort of facing your fear could be a motivation for people. Like, hey, I want to face my fear. Barack Obama recently gave a speech. He talked about the politics of fear. These conflicts are all about people fearing each other and wanting to beat the shit out of each other. So, they're all, so it seems to be kind of very timely. So, yeah.
You're kind of excited to have found an angle that you think will be connective and that people are willing to listen to.
Yeah. So I feel heard. Thanks.
Thank you.
I do. It might be, maybe we want to go into our try it next. Is that, unless you need to be heard, if anybody needs to round heard, but I think we'll have a chance to do that. And Celia's was going to facilitate the try it exercise. Oh.
So